Right now, you might feel a peculiar, rigid tightness in your upper back and neck, a sensation of carrying a weight that does not belong to you but has become so familiar you no longer know how to set it down. Perhaps you have spent the day bracing yourself against the quiet fear that if you are not constantly vigilant, you might accidentally repeat the old, unresolved patterns of your family, the same hurried decisions, the same reflexive anxieties, or the same cycle of holding back your true voice. This is not just exhaustion. It is the fatigue of being an architect who is terrified that the structure they are building is doomed to collapse because of a foundation they did not choose. You are moving through your life with your shoulders pulled toward your ears, silently trying to anchor yourself against a river of history that feels as though it is trying to sweep you away into behaviors you promised yourself you would never mimic. You are here, in the dim, cooling air of your own space, where the only sound is the subtle settling of the floorboards or the distant, muffled thrum of the city turning its lights lower. The room is wrapped in the indigo hue of late evening, a gentle, protective shade that does not ask you to see anything clearly. You are lying in a space that is entirely your own, where the air feels thin and clean, smelling faintly of cedar and the cool, damp earth that remains even after a long summer day. There is no need to maintain your posture here. You can let the tension in your spine unravel, piece by piece, as if you were a scroll being laid out flat upon a sturdy table. This is your sanctuary. There is no audience, no ancestral line standing in judgment, and no expectation for you to be anything other than a person who is simply deeply tired. You are not broken because you carry this heavy inherited sense of responsibility. What you are feeling is not a personal failure, but the natural human response to the complexity of your own history. Tonight, we will not force your mind to become silent, nor will we try to win a war against the memories that keep you awake. We will not try to drain the river of your past. We will learn how to stand as the bridge that watches the water pass by. You are safe enough to soften. You are safe enough to release the iron grip you have kept on your own life. Consider this paradox. Your fear of repeating the past is exactly what keeps you tethered to it. You are so busy watching the water beneath you, bracing for the flood, that you have forgotten you are the bridge itself, constructed of solid, enduring material that the river cannot carry away. The Buddhist insight here is that the river of your lineage, the patterns, the struggles, and the echoes of those who walked before you can only dictate your path if you believe you are part of the water. But you are not the water. You are the stone. You are the structural, immovable reality that defines its own presence, regardless of how fast the current runs below. Maybe you have felt this too, the sudden, jolting realization that you have just spoken with the same worry or reacted with the same frantic energy that you once swore you would outgrow. It feels like a betrayal of your own intentions. It feels like you are trapped in a role you never auditioned for. And yet, this happens precisely because you are trying to react against the past rather than building a future from the stillness of the present. You do not have to solve the entire mystery of your heritage tonight. You do not need to rewrite the lives of those who came before you, nor do you need to spend these precious hours of rest defending yourself against their ghosts. You are safe enough to let your guard down. You are safe enough to let the bridge stand still. You have been holding your breath, waiting for the structural integrity of your life to be tested by the next surge of the river. You have been walking on the bridge as if it were a tightrope, trembling with the effort of perfect balance. Tonight we are going to explore the possibility of placing your feet firmly on the stone, of feeling the weight of your own existence, and of discovering that the bridge is far stronger than you dared to believe. You are not required to be a finished masterpiece of behavior tonight. You are not required to be a perfect improvement on the people who raised you. You are only required to be present, breathing, and allowing the night to settle around you like a heavy, comforting cloak. Nothing is required of you now. The world will not crumble if you stop bracing your muscles against the invisible pressures of the past. The river will flow, the patterns will continue, but you are allowed to be the observer of the process rather than its victim. Right now, there is only the feeling of the surface beneath you, the gentle rise and fall of your chest, and the deepening quiet of the room. You have arrived. You have done enough by simply existing through this day. Everything else can wait for the light of morning. And even then, it will not be the same world you left behind. As you begin to let go of the need to manage your own future, notice the sensation in your jaw. It has been held in a state of alert, ready to explain or defend, but it has no work to do here. Gently let it drop. Release the tongue from the roof of your mouth. Feel the space between your teeth. Now, travel your attention to the center of your forehead, the place where you often try to foresee and analyze. Let that space widen, smooth and blur. You are stepping back from the control tower. You are coming down from the scaffold. You are returning to the quiet, unmoving center of your own life. In the stories we will share, we will encounter the bridge builder who learned to work with the stone rather than against the water. And we will walk with the ferryman who realized that his presence was not defined by the oars he held. But for this moment, just listen to the rhythm of your own heart. It is the only tempo that matters. It is slow, it is steady, and it is entirely your own. You are safe, you are held, and you are allowed to simply stop fighting the flow. Stay with this softness, and if the mind wanders back to the old, familiar worries, just notice them, label them as the rushing water, and return your attention to the solid, unmoving reality of your own breath. You are the stone bridge, and you are here to stay. In a deep, narrow canyon where the river moved with a persistent, low-frequency roar, there lived a master stonemason who was tasked with maintaining the ancient arched bridge that connected two steep cliffs. This bridge was the only path for villagers to reach the highlands, and for decades the mason lived in a small, damp hut beneath the western arch. He was a man of intense focus, his hands permanently stained with granite dust, his shoulders broad and stiff from the constant lifting of heavy blocks. His inner struggle was not with the stone itself, but with the haunting belief that he was merely a placeholder for the failures of his father, who had built the bridge before him. His father had been a man of immense skill, but equally immense anxiety, always worrying that the bridge was poorly seated, always checking the mortar, always waking at night to listen to the floods. The son had inherited this vigilance. He felt that if he didn't watch the bridge with the same obsessive intensity, the legacy of his father and his father's father would wash away into the river. He spent his days tapping the stone blocks with a heavy, iron-headed walking stick, a tool he had fashioned specifically to test the density of the masonry. Clack, clack, clack. The sound was rhythmic, relentless, and sharp, cutting through the natural song of the river. If he heard a sound that was slightly hollow, he would immediately wedge a new sliver of stone into the gap, afraid that the small resonance was a sign of impending ruin. One late autumn afternoon, when the air was cold and the river was swollen with melted glacial snow, a traveling hermit arrived at the bridge. This woman was known for her strange habit of never speaking, unless it was to ask for something that seemed impossible. She walked slowly, her robes the color of dry riverbed clay, and she carried nothing but a small, delicate riverstone whistle tied to a bit of braided grass around her neck. She stood in the center of the bridge, the spray from the canyon below misting her face, and watched the mason as he performed his ritualistic test with the iron stick. He was focused on a central arch, convinced he heard a tremor in the stone that promised collapse. His brow was furrowed, his jaw set hard, his breath came in short, panicked bursts. He did not notice the hermit until she stood directly in his path, her hands tucked neatly into her sleeves. She waited until he struck the stone again, clack, and then she held up the small riverstone whistle. It was perfectly smooth, shaped by centuries of rushing water, with a single tiny hole drilled through its center. She placed the whistle on the narrow ledge of the bridge and gestured for the mason to sit. He hesitated, his hands trembling from the adrenaline of his worry, but there was something in her stillness that made the iron stick in his hand feel suddenly ridiculous. He sat, setting the heavy tool on the cold granite. "The river is angry today," she said, her voice barely rising above the thunder of the water. "Listen." She didn't ask him to listen to the roar, though. She pointed at the whistle. "If you strike the stone, you only hear your own fear. But if you are still, the wind will play the stone." The mason watched her. He waited for the lesson, for the critique of his technique, for the advice on how to shore up the foundation. But she did nothing. She simply sat, looking out at the canyon walls. The wind began to pick up, funneling through the narrow space between the cliffs, and as it passed through the tiny aperture of the stone whistle, it produced a soft, resonant note, a low, humming vibration that harmonized perfectly with the roaring river. It was not a sharp, metallic clack. It was a deep, sustained sound that seemed to come from the very marrow of the earth. He watched the whistle. It did not resist the wind, it accepted it. It did not fear the river, it allowed the resonance of the river to be part of its own voice. The mason looked at his iron stick, then back at the whistle. He felt a sudden, sharp ache in his chest, the recognition that he had spent his entire life trying to be the iron stick, striking the world to see if it would hold. Afraid of every vibration, terrified of every hollow note, he had been so obsessed with testing the stone for weakness that he had never heard the strength of the bridge itself, a structure that had stood long before he was born and would remain long after he was gone. He reached out and touched the whistle. It was cool, grounded, and utterly devoid of the nervous energy he carried in his own body. The hermit leaned toward him and asked, "Does the stone fear the water? Or is it merely the place where the water meets the air? You are not the river, and you are not the bridge. You are the space where they both exist. Why do you spend your life trying to anchor the river to the stone?" The mason remained silent. The roar of the water was the same as it had been moments ago, but his perception of it had shifted. It no longer sounded like a threat to the foundation, it sounded like a partner to the bridge. He looked at his hands, calloused and gray. He realized that the anxiety he felt, the phantom dread of repeating his father's life, was not a duty, but a habit of the mind. He had been treating his own life like a structure in danger, testing it for flaws, waiting for the crack that would prove him unworthy. He left the iron stick on the stone. He did not pick it up. He watched the hermit stand and walk to the other side of the canyon, leaving the river stone whistle behind on the ledge. He didn't follow her. He didn't even stand up to thank her. He simply sat in the center of the arch, the wind playing its song through the stone, and allowed himself to hear the resonance without the need to explain it, without the need to fix it, and without the need to fear it. For the first time, he felt the granite beneath him not as a weight he had to support, but as a surface that was supporting him. He closed his eyes, and for a long, slow moment, the tight, rigid band across his shoulders, which he had carried since childhood, felt as if it were beginning to unravel into the sound of the wind. He was still the mason, and there were still stones to tend, but he was no longer the man who was waiting for the arch to fail. He was just a man, sitting on a bridge, listening to the world as it was, rather than the world as he feared it might be. This story shows us that the very tools we use to stay safe, our hypervigilance, our mental checking, our fear of the past, often become the very obstacles that prevent us from experiencing the strength of our own foundation. You too have been carrying an iron stick, testing the ground of your own life, afraid of a hollow sound that might not even exist, but perhaps the bridge you are walking on is far more capable than your worry suggests. As we continue, we will explore why the mind clings so tightly to these tests, and how we might finally set down the iron and learn to listen to the song of our own life. This story is not suggesting that you should lack concern for the structures of your life, nor does it ask you to become indifferent to the history you carry. It is not a call to become cold or to turn away from the very real challenges of your ancestry. Instead, it offers something much quieter, an invitation to distinguish between the force of the river and the strength of the stone. The stonemason's suffering did not arise because he cared about the bridge, it arose because he believed that the bridge's survival depended entirely on his own frantic, nervous intervention. He had conflated his identity with his vigilance, believing that if he stopped checking for flaws, he was somehow abandoning his post or inviting catastrophe. Buddhist wisdom often uses the image of the river to describe the past, a flow of events, habits, and inherited patterns that continue to move regardless of our desires. When we feel overwhelmed by the fear that we are becoming our parents, or that we are destined to repeat the same narrow paths, we are essentially trying to stand in the middle of that current and hold it back with our bare hands. We think that by worrying about the flood, we are somehow managing it. But the insight here is that the river is already flowing. and it does not need your permission or your anxiety to continue its course. The suffering you experience is not caused by the river itself, the history of your family, or the patterns you have observed, but by the way your mind insists on gripping the iron stick and striking the stones of your present life, hoping to hear a sound that isn't hollow. Think of how often you add a second wound to the first. The first wound is simply being human, the challenges you face, the history you were born into, the mistakes you have made, and the moments where you felt caught in a pattern you didn't choose. These are the natural currents of life. They are heavy, they are undeniable, and they are difficult. But the second wound is the judgment you pile on top of them. It is the voice that says, I should be better than this, or if I am not vigilant, I will fail just like those who came before me. That voice is the iron stick. It is a tool designed for protection that has become a source of continuous, vibrating anxiety. You strike your own mind, looking for cracks, and in the process you create the very disharmony you are trying to prevent. When the hermit placed that riverstone whistle on the bridge, she was showing the mason that even the smallest, most broken-looking object can become an instrument of harmony if it is allowed to simply exist in the wind. She wasn't telling him to leave the bridge. Untended, she was showing him that he could perform his duty without becoming a prisoner to his fear. This is the difference between attachment and presence. Attachment is the tight, suffocating grip that says, this must be perfect, or I am not safe. Presence is the ability to walk the bridge, to maintain the stones, and to enjoy the wind without demanding that the river stop roaring. You have spent so much energy trying to be the iron, the hard and unyielding defender of your own peace. But perhaps, just for tonight, you can consider what it might mean to be the stone that allows the wind to play through it. When you feel the urge to replay a mistake from the past, or when you feel the phantom anxiety of a future you are trying to predict, notice that this is your mind's way of reaching for the iron stick. It is an attempt to strike the stone and hear a confirmation of your own competence. But what if you stopped striking? What if you simply acknowledged that the worry is there, acknowledged that the river is roaring, and then allowed yourself to be still, like the bridge that stands firm not because it is rigid, but because it is rooted? The wisdom here is that you do not need to rewrite your history to find peace. You do not need to scrub away the influence of those who came before you, nor do you need to spend your nights guarding the borders of your soul against the possibility of becoming them. The bridge is not the river. The mountain is not the rain. You are the structural reality of the present moment, and you are capable of holding your own history without being dissolved by it. The fatigue you feel is the physical evidence of trying to carry that history as if it were your own personal burden, rather than a force of nature that is simply passing through. When you feel that familiar, sharp sting of the need to control or the need to fix, pause and ask yourself if you are trying to repair the wall, or if you are trying to repair your own sense of safety. Most of the time, the suffering we experience is a result of us trying to build a shelter out of our own thoughts. We think that if we can just think the right way, if we can just worry enough, we will build a roof that never leaks. But the roof is already there. You have been walking beneath it, protected and supported by the simple fact that you are present, that you are breathing, and that you are allowed to be imperfect. Consider the possibility that your anxiety is not a sign of your weakness, but a sign of how deeply you care about the integrity of your life. But care, when it becomes a frantic, heavy demand, loses its grace. It becomes a weight that tires you out before the day has even reached its peak. You can care for your life, you can honor your past, and you can tend to your future without having to treat every moment as a battle for survival. The mason was afraid that if he stopped testing the stones, the bridge would collapse. He didn't realize that the bridge was already holding him. In the same way, you are held by the life you are living right now, even in the moments when it feels like everything is shifting. You are not being asked to ignore your challenges. You are being asked to change the way you relate to them. Instead of being the one who tests every stone with a heavy iron tool, try being the one who listens for the resonance when a difficult feeling arises. Don't rush to silence it or fix it. Let it sound. Let it vibrate. Let it be what it is. And notice how, when you stop trying to dampen the resonance, it eventually finds its own harmony. This is the path toward a different kind of strength, the strength that comes from knowing you are not the one who controls the river, but you are the one who is solid enough to let it pass by without losing your footing. As you lie here, feel the floor beneath your bed. It is unmoving. It does not vibrate with the worries of your mind. It is a solid foundation, and you are resting upon it. You have been carrying the iron stick of your hypervigilance all day long, but here in the dark you have no work to do. You have no stones to tap. You have no echoes to hunt. The bridge of your own life is holding you. It has held you through every previous night, and it will hold you through the night to come. You don't have to test it anymore. You can simply let yourself be held. Think about the tiny hole in that riverstone whistle. It was not a flaw, it was the condition for the music. The cracks you see in your own history. The places where you feel you have fallen short or repeated the patterns of your elders. These are not failures of your architecture. They are the conditions through which your own wisdom finds its voice. If you were perfectly seamless, if you were entirely without history or without struggle, you would not be able to resonate with the world. It is the openness, the willingness to be touched by the river of life that allows you to sing. And tonight you are invited to stop trying to plug the hole. You are invited to stop trying to silence the sound. Just listen. Listen to the rhythm of the room. Listen to the depth of your own breath, and let the truth of your own solidity settle into your bones. There is no urgency here. There is only the quiet, ancient song of the bridge standing in the moonlight, and you finally learning how to be the stone that remains. If it feels right, allow your body to settle a little deeper into the space you occupy. You do not need to sit in any particular way. You do not need to hold your spine straight or your hands in a specific shape. The goal here is not to perform a meditation, but to simply offer yourself the same quiet, unpressured space that the stonemason finally found on the edge of the canyon. Take a breath, not because you have to deepen it, but simply to acknowledge the rhythm that has been carrying you all day. As you breathe in, feel the weight of the air. As you breathe out, imagine those small, tight hinges in your body, the jaw, the shoulders, the space between your eyebrows softening just a fraction, as if the tension were a layer of dust being blown away by a gentle mountain breeze. Now, bring your attention to the internal iron stick you have been carrying today. Perhaps there is a thought that has been recurring, a pattern of vigilance you have been replaying, or a specific expectation you have been trying to meet to ensure you don't repeat the past. Do not judge this thought. Do not try to scrub it away or fight it. Instead, simply name it. You might silently say to yourself, "This is the sound of the iron stick testing the ground." Just notice it as if you were standing on the stone, looking at the pattern without needing to be involved in it. If you find that the thought is persistent, imagine it as a single resonant strike against the granite. It is there. It is a mark of your effort, a testament to how hard you have been working to keep your own life from collapsing. There is no need to erase it. There is no need to be ashamed of it. What happens if you simply look at the impact, acknowledge that it exists, and then consciously step back from the edge of the arch? Imagine the iron stick lying heavy on the stone floor of the bridge. You can see it there, solid and cold. You can choose to leave it untouched. Instead, turn your gaze toward the space where you are sitting. Feel the texture of the surface beneath you, the parts of your life that you did not have to build. The parts that were always there, solid and unmoving, beneath your efforts. Perhaps you notice a vibration of anxiety in your chest. In the past, you might have rushed to tap the worry, trying to see if it was a sign of impending ruin. Tonight, invite yourself to be curious about the vibration instead. What is it like to look at the worry without the urge to fix it? What is it like to let the fear be there and to realize that you are still supported by the bridge? You do not need to solve the anxiety. You do not need to explain it to anyone. You are simply the witness sitting on the bridge, listening to the wind move through the canyon. If you feel your mind reaching for the iron stick again, if you feel that familiar, urgent pull to test your own stability, gently pause. Take another slow, quiet breath. You are not failing if you want to reach for the tool. The habit of vigilance is deeply ingrained. Simply notice that the urge has arisen. You might say, "I am noticing the need to be certain then," with as much kindness as you would offer a tired friend. Visualize yourself setting your hands down. letting them rest in your lap, completely empty of tools. There is nothing to be tested tonight. The bridge is allowed to be exactly as it is, weathered, firm, and entirely real. Feel the texture of the granite beneath the imaginary weight you have been projecting. It is cool, grounded, and enduring. It does not ask you to prove your strength. It only asks you to exist. If you feel a sense of unease as you stop the testing, stay with that sensation for a moment. Do not push it away. Let it be another note in the canyon. It is not an enemy to be defeated. It is just another part of the resonance. If you can let it sit there without needing to strike back, you will find that the unease eventually changes its nature. It may grow quieter, or it may shift into something else, like a fading echo in the deep, darkening gorge. You have the choice in every moment to be either the mason caught in the cycle of testing, or the listener who knows the strength of the arch. When you choose to be the listener, you stop adding the second wound of judgment. You stop blaming yourself for the fact that you are human, and that human lives carry the echoes of those who walked before them. If it feels right, place one hand over your heart. Feel the warmth of your palm against your chest. This is the only bridge that truly matters tonight. The steady, rhythmic beat of a heart that has kept you going. Even through the days when you felt you were failing, that heart does not need to be tested for strength. It is already doing exactly what it was designed to do. It is sustaining your life, breath by breath, beat by beat. You might notice that as you stop reaching for the iron, the room around you feels a little more spacious. The silence is no longer an empty void. You have to fill with thoughts. It is a canyon that is already full of music. You don't have to put anything on it. You don't have to leave any mark. You are simply resting in the presence of your own existence. If you find that the mind wanders back to the future, back to what you must avoid or how you must differ from the past, simply notice that too. That is just another gust of wind moving through the canyon. You can watch it pass without becoming it. You are the bridge, and the thoughts are just the wind. The wind changes, the wind moves, but the bridge remains. You are safe enough to soften. You are safe enough to let the fears of repeating the past simply fade into the darkness of the room. You have been holding the heavy tool of worry for so long, and your fingers are likely cramped and tired. But look, the tool is already gone. Your hand is empty. Your heart is quiet. There is no need to hurry. There is no need to arrive anywhere else. The canyon is here. The granite is silent and enduring. The river is moving through the gorge, just as it has for centuries. Without any input from you, you are part of that ancient, unhurried rhythm. You are part of the stone, the bridge, and the air. As you continue to breathe, notice the sensation of letting go of the need to be better than your history. What a relief it is to simply be. What a weight is lifted when you realize that nobody is grading the bridge, and there is no ledger kept of your perfection. There is only the long, quiet night, the gentle support of the bed beneath you, and the slow, unfolding process of being alive. If you feel ready, allow yourself to sink a little deeper into the mattress. Let the bed hold the weight you have been carrying. You have been the one holding yourself up for so long. Let the earth hold you now. Let the architecture of the building hold you. You are part of the world, not separate from it. You are allowed to be small. You are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to be, for this moment, entirely unburdened by the past. The stonemason eventually learned that the most beautiful part of his life was the moment he put down the iron stick and walked away. He realized that the bridge wasn't something he had to justify. It was something he had to inhabit. And tonight, you are doing the same. You are moving from the role of the guardian of history to the role of the witness of your own life. And in that transition, you will find the rest you have been searching for all along. Stay here in this softness. There is no rush to conclude, no rush to change. If the thoughts return, just observe them, as if they were distant currents passing through the canyon below. They don't need you to fix them. They just need you to see them and let them pass. You are the stone, not the water. And the night is a wide, dark, gentle space, waiting to hold whatever you are ready to put down. Years after the mason first learned to listen to the wind on the bridge, the village had grown, and a young woman came to study under his craft. She was a scholar of texts and history, sharp-minded and perpetually restless. She carried a small, heavy iron box that held the charcoal-sketched blueprints of the bridges her own father had failed to build a collection of architectural dreams that had ended in bankruptcy and shame. She was determined to prove that with enough calculation, she could build a structure that would never crack, never tremble, and never echo the failures of her family line. Every morning, she arrived at the bridge before the mist had lifted from the canyon floor. She spent hours measuring the stone with a brass scale, recalculating the stress points, and whispering formulas to herself as if they were protective charms. She was not working. She was arguing with the mountain. When the wind howled through the canyon, she would wince, her shoulders pulling tight, her gaze darting to the stone as if expecting it to shatter at any second. She was convinced that if she could just make the calculations perfect, she would finally be safe from the humiliation that had defined her childhood home. The mason, now an old man whose presence was as quiet as the granite itself, watched her from the shade of a nearby cedar tree. He did not interfere with her pacing or her frantic scribbling. He simply continued his own work, which consisted mostly of clearing away the loose debris that the river had deposited on the bridge during the night. He used a long-handled wooden broom made of woven birch, a tool that made no sound, only a soft rhythmic shush, shush against the stone. One afternoon, the young woman was in the midst of a particularly intense struggle. The wind had picked up, and as the air funneled through the gorge, the bridge began to hum the same low, resonant vibration that had once frightened the mason. The woman gasped, dropped her brass scale, and pressed her palms against the stone, trying to physically hold it still. As if her own flesh could counteract the vibration of the earth, she was crying, her breath ragged, her entire body shaking with the terror of a child who thinks the house is falling down. The mason stopped his sweeping. He walked over, not with an iron stick but with his wooden broom. He did not speak. He simply began to sweep the dust around her feet, moving the dirt in a circle. He swept the grit of her blueprints, the tiny flecks of charcoal, and the dry leaves that had gathered in the corner. He worked around her like a slow tide. After several minutes, the woman slowed her breathing. She looked up at him, her eyes red, her hands still pressed against the bridge, her knuckles white. "It's shaking," she whispered, her voice tight with the old familiar panic. "It's going to fall. Everything is going to fall." The mason leaned on his broom and looked not at the bridge, but at the way her hands were clawing into the stone. He reached into his robe and pulled out a small, dry wooden peg he had carved for this purpose. He did not drive it into the masonry. He simply placed it in her hand. It was smooth, light, and utterly insignificant compared to the massive granite blocks. "You are trying to hold the mountain still, so that you can feel solid," the mason said, his voice as soft as the breeze. "But the mountain is solid because it allows the mountain to be what it is. You are trying to bridge the gap between your past and your future with your own fear. But look at your hands." She looked down. Her hands were trembling, but the bridge was not. The bridge was vibrating. Yes, it was singing its song to the wind, but it was not collapsing. The masonry remained perfectly joined. The mortar held. The arch was as grounded as it had been for centuries. "I am terrified," she admitted, the confession slipping out like a stone tumbling into the deep. "I am terrified that I am just like them, that I am going to end up with nothing but boxes of failed plans and a name that nobody trusts." The mason nodded, a gesture of deep, unadorned compassion. He did not tell her she was wrong. He did not tell her that everything would be perfect. He did not promise her that she would never fail. He simply reached out and took the brass scale from the ground, folding it gently and placing it back into her bag. "You are allowed to be afraid," he said. "The fear is the river, but you do not have to be the river. You can be the mason who knows that even when the bridge vibrates, it is doing exactly what it was built to do: connect two sides of the canyon." She stood up slowly, her legs feeling unsteady. She looked at the wooden peg in her hand, then at the vast, roaring space beneath the bridge. For the first time, she did not look for a place to brace herself. She let her hands hang at her sides. She let her shoulders drop. She chose to stand on the bridge and feel the vibration without trying to fix it. She did not become magically confident. The fear was still there, sitting in her belly like a cold stone. But she did not let the fear turn into action. She did not grab her scale. She did not return to her frantic calculations. She took a breath, felt the air fill her lungs. and for the first time, she stood in the center of the arch and simply existed. It was a small shift, a microscopic movement in the geography of her soul, but it was the difference between being a slave to the past and being the architect of her own quiet. She remained on the bridge until the sun began to dip behind the cliffs, turning the granite a soft, deep violet. The wind continued to blow, the river continued to roar, and the bridge continued to vibrate. But she was no longer a stranger to the canyon. She was a part of it. She walked back to her hut that evening, with her blueprints left on the ledge, not because she had abandoned them, but because she no longer needed to carry them as a shield. She had learned the subtle, profound discipline of doing nothing when the mind demands that you save yourself. This is the transformation we often overlook. We think that healing means we must stop feeling the vibration, stop hearing the roar, or stop remembering the past. We think that being strong means we must be immovable. But the scholar realized that the bridge's true strength was its ability to participate in the song of the canyon. When she stopped resisting the vibration, she realized the bridge was not falling, it was resonant. You have been running from your own resonances for a long time. You have been trying to make your life perfectly still, perfectly quiet, and perfectly predictable, fearing that any movement is a sign of an approaching collapse. But tonight, in the quiet of this space, consider that your life, with all its history, all its patterns, and all its recurring worries, is not a structure failing under pressure. It is a bridge that has been holding you all along. The suffering you feel when you replay the past is the sound of your own hands clawing at the stone, trying to hold a mountain that is already standing. You are not required to be the one who fixes the history of your family, or the one who ensures that you never repeat a mistake. You are simply required to be the one who stands on the bridge and breathes. When you stop clawing, when you stop calculating, and when you stop demanding that the past vanish, you will find that the foundation you have been standing on is far more solid than you ever believed. It takes a deeper kind of courage to sit in the vibration, to feel the roar, and to know that you are not being swept away. This is the courage of the mason, the courage of the bridge, and the courage of the heart that finally understands that it is already whole. As we move into the deeper integration of these truths, allow yourself to let go of the iron stick and the blueprints. There is nothing to prove tonight. There is only the long, slow exhale of a person who has finally stopped trying to build a perfect life and has started, at last, to live in the one they are already standing on. Notice how the muscles in your back begin to let go, how the weight shifts, and how the floor feels like it is rising to meet you, holding you, steady and secure, as you drift into the deepening night. The mason's desperate need to test the bridge, to ensure every stone remained perfectly in place, is a mirror for the way the mind tries to secure its own safety through constant, anxious calculation. You live your life in a state of high-frequency vigilance, fearing that if you stop testing the ground beneath you, the very history you hope to escape will rise up and pull you under. This is the mechanism of resistance. You believe that if you can just predict every danger, or if you can just prove that you are different from those who came before you, you will finally earn the right to rest. But this act of constant prediction is precisely what prevents you from resting. By rehearsing the future, you bring the potential catastrophes of tomorrow into the sanctuary of your present. And by replaying the past, you insist on keeping the old wounds fresh, as if by studying them closely enough, you might finally find the secret to their healing. This is the central irony of our suffering. We believe that by obsessively turning the pain over in our minds, we are being responsible, that we are ensuring we will not repeat the patterns of our elders. But looking back at the river of our heritage with eyes full of fear does not change the flow, it only ensures that we remain standing on the bank, cold and trembling, instead of crossing over into the stillness of our own life. When we identify so completely with our history, when we take our ancestors' failures and sew them into the fabric of our own identity, we become a collection of old stories rather than a person living in the present. We turn our pain into a permanent address, a place where we feel we belong, even when it is the very place that keeps us from finding peace. Buddhist wisdom teaches that we must learn to distinguish between the first pain, the unavoidable reality of being human, the history we were born into, and the losses we have weathered, and the second pain, which is the reaction our mind attaches to the first. The first pain is a force of nature, like the river in the canyon. It is real, it is heavy, and it is part of the landscape. But the second pain is the iron stick you strike against the stone. It is the self-judgment, the frantic need for approval, the shame that says you are fundamentally flawed for feeling the way you do, and the internal voice that demands you be more, do more, and fix more before you are allowed to be at ease. You cannot always choose the first pain. Life will bring its own challenges, its own currents, and its own rough weather. But you can learn to stop feeding the second pain. You can learn to stop using the iron stick on your own heart. When you notice your mind beginning to spiral into the future, trying to solve a problem that hasn't even arrived, you are adding a layer of second pain. You are taking a neutral, quiet moment and filling it with the noise of your own anticipation. You are trying to control the wind before it even begins to howl. The wisdom of the bridge builder is not that he stopped the river, but that he stopped trying to be the one who had to stop it. He realized that the bridge could hold the weight of the water without becoming the water itself. This is a profound shift in relationship. It does not mean you stop caring about your path. It means you stop treating your own existence as a problem that needs to be solved. Many of us go through our days wearing our past like a heavy, lead-lined coat, convinced that if we take it off, we will be vulnerable to the same mistakes that haunted our families. We are afraid of the uncertainty, and so we prefer the familiar ache of our anxiety to the vast, open, terrifying potential of simply not knowing what will happen next. We crave approval from a history that can no longer give it to us, and we fear the judgment of people who are no longer here to see us. This constant replaying of old tapes is a form of self-sabotage that we mistakenly believe is a form of wisdom. We think that by being prepared for the worst, we are being smart. But you cannot prepare for the worst by exhausting yourself in the present. You only ensure that when the challenges of life do arrive, you meet them with a depleted spirit, rather than with the clarity and strength of a grounded mind. This is why Buddhist practice emphasizes the middle way, not the path of passivity, where you let life happen to you without agency, nor the path of aggression, where you try to force the world into a shape that suits your fear. The middle way is the path of the bridge. It is the ability to stand firm in the reality of your current situation, to acknowledge the weight of your past and the pull of the future, and yet remain upright, composed, and present. It is the realization that your identity is not fixed in the mistakes of your parents, nor is it waiting to be discovered in the successful predictions of your mind. Your identity is a process of being here, right now as you are. It is a process of unbinding yourself from the need to be perfect or the need to be different, and simply being present for the life that is unfolding in your hands. When you stop trying to fix your own humanity through the vehicle of shame, something profound begins to shift. You stop being the mason who is terrified of the vibration, and you start being the person who can feel the vibration and know, in the deepest center of your marrow, that you are not the one who is collapsing. You become a person who can experience fear without being owned by it. You become a person who can remember the past without trying to relive it. And most importantly, you become a person who can rest, because you have finally stopped believing that the structural integrity of the entire world depends on your ability to hold your breath and brace your shoulders against the dark. This is not a cold state of detachment. It is a warm, deeply human state of acceptance. It is the recognition that the river of life is vast, that it carries the echoes of 1,000 years, and that you are allowed to stand in the middle of that flow and not be swept away. You are solid, you are rooted. You are more than the sum of the inherited worries that keep you awake in the middle of the night. You have the capacity to choose a different relationship with your difficulty. You don't have to turn it into a struggle. You can treat it as a conversation, as a song, as a wind that passes through the canyon of your own life and leaves you standing, firmer than you were before. But this requires a subtle, persistent discipline, the discipline of noticing when you have reached for the iron stick. When you feel the familiar tightening of the jaw or the sudden, sharp demand that you explain or fix a situation, just stop. You don't have to act. You don't have to solve it. Just stop. Breathe and feel the weight of your own body against the surface beneath you. Return your awareness to the present moment, to the simple, unadorned fact of your own existence. This is the practice. It is not about reaching a destination where you never feel anxious again. It is about reaching a place where you are no longer at war with your own heart. And that place is not somewhere far off in the future, built by your calculations and your control. That place is right here, beneath the noise, in the quiet, solid stone of your own being. Notice how the air in the room feels a little softer now, as if the walls of your own concern have started to lose their rigidity. You are doing something very deep tonight. You are dismantling the scaffolding of your own worry, block by block, brick by brick, and finding that you are not falling. You are simply arriving. You are arriving at a place where you can finally stop acting as the judge of your own experience. The stories of the past are just stories, and the worries of the future are just dreams. But this moment, this breath, this weight, this is real. This is your life, and it is safe to be here. It is safe to stop trying to earn your place in the world by the strength of your vigilance. You already have a place. You already belong. And the night is here to remind you that you are allowed to rest. You might wonder how this wisdom, born on a canyon bridge, can survive the friction of your everyday life. It is easy to find clarity in the quiet of the night, but the real practice begins tomorrow, in the sudden interruptions and the small, familiar pressures that make you feel as though you must be something other than you are. The wisdom of the stone bridge is not meant to be kept in a temple. It is meant to walk with you through the grocery store, into the office, and into the spaces where you feel most vulnerable. Consider those moments when you are lying awake at night, your phone glowing in the dark, refreshing a feed, or waiting for a message that you hope will provide some sense of certainty. In those moments, you are essentially back on the bridge, frantically tapping the stones with an iron stick, desperate to hear a solid sound so you can finally feel safe. You are not waiting for a text. You are waiting for a sign that your life is acceptable as it is. But the anxiety you feel while waiting is just the echo of your own vigilance. It is the sound of you trying to manage the river, trying to force the current to be still. Next time you find yourself gripped by that need to check and recheck, pause for one heartbeat. Notice the tension in your hands as you hold the device. You are not required to put the phone away forever, but you are invited to recognize that you are currently testing the stone. Simply naming the act "I am currently trying to anchor myself against an uncertain future" is the first, most powerful step towards setting down the iron stick. Or think about those times in your day when you are smiling and nodding at someone. Even though inside you feel exhausted, fragmented, or heavy, you feel as though you are obligated to maintain the image of the unshakable person. You fear that if you show the slightest tremor, the entire arch will collapse, and others will see you as you fear you are unfinished, unsure, or behind. But consider the freedom of acknowledging, just to yourself, that you are currently a bridge that is vibrating. When you stop pretending, you do not lose your integrity. You gain a profound, quiet strength. You can care deeply about the people in your life without having to grip the stone so tightly that your own hands go numb. You can listen, you can respond, and you can participate without the constant, draining labor of bracing yourself against your own history. When you make a mistake, and you will, because you are human, notice if your first instinct is to immediately reach for the stick of self-judgment. We are taught that shame is a useful tool, that if we punish ourselves enough, we will become better. But shame is not a mason, it is a flood. It does not help you build. It just keeps you trapped in the same loop of replaying what you should have done differently. The next time a mistake triggers that spiral of self-reproach, remember the mason. Remind yourself, this is not a sign of collapse, this is simply the sound of the wind. You do not need to strike your own heart to see if it is sound. You do not need to hide your past. You only need to see it, accept that it exists as part of the canyon, and continue with the work of living. The pressure to be ahead in life is perhaps the most persistent illusion of all. We compare our internal sense of confusion to the external display of someone else's life, and we conclude that we are failing. But you are not behind. You are not on a track that requires you to reach a destination by a certain hour. You are a bridge, and the bridge does not apologize for its location, its height, or the path of the river that runs beneath it. Every season has its purpose. Your current season of feeling heavy or uncertain or simply tired is not an interruption of your life. It is a vital part of the landscape. To fight it is to fight the nature of your own existence. You may also find yourself trying to control the people around you, your partner, your children, your colleagues, because you fear that if they do not behave in a predictable way, the bridge of your life will be ruined. This is a common, understandable response to the fear of uncertainty, but you are not the director of their lives. You are not even the director of your own life in the way you imagine. You are a participant, a witness, a presence. When you stop trying to manage the outcome of every interaction, you open the door to genuine connection. You allow the other person to be a mystery, and you allow yourself to be a person who can hold that mystery without needing to solve it. Even in the smallest actions, like the moment before you answer an email or respond to a difficult question, there is an opening for this wisdom. Most of our suffering comes from the impulsive, automatic way we react to the world, based on the fear that if we are not quick or perfect or correct, we will be vulnerable. Taking a single conscious breath before you react is a form of profound discipline. It is a way of setting the iron stick on the ground. That one breath creates a space where you can choose, rather than just repeat the old, tired patterns of your ancestors. It is the difference between being a slave to the need to be secure and being a person who is intentionally participating in their own life. You do not need to earn your rest by being perfect, and you do not need to prove your worth by ensuring the bridge never hums. The exhaustion you feel is the result of trying to stop the river from flowing, trying to force your own life to be a static, unchanging monument. You are permitted to be exactly as you are tonight. You are allowed to leave the worries unresolved, the past unfixed, and the vibrations visible. You are not a structure that needs a constant inspection. You are a human being who has been working very hard, and you have every right to lean back, to look at the sky, and to finally, truly let go of the stick. The modern world asks you to be a permanent, unmoving monument, but the heart asks for nothing more than the permission to be resonant. You can be disciplined in your work, you can be caring toward others, and you can be mindful of your own growth, all without having to hold your breath to keep the canyon silent. You are safe enough to stop. You are safe enough to be seen with your history, your echoes, and your natural vibrations. This is not the end of your journey. It is the beginning of a life where you are finally present for the beauty that was there all along, underneath all the fear, in the cool, solid, and enduring stone of your own being. You are already exactly where you need to be, and you have nothing left to prove to anyone, least of all to the version of yourself that thought it had to carry an iron stick to deserve peace. The silence that now fills your room is not empty. It is heavy with the relief of someone who has stopped running. You can feel that same silence here, beneath the sheets, beneath the noise of the day, beneath the thoughts that try to tell you that you are not enough. You are here. You are exactly as you are, and that is enough. You don't have to carry the weight of those who came before you. You don't have to bridge the gaps of their lives with your own suffering. You are the stone, and the stone is allowed to simply sit in the moonlight, witnessing the river and staying right where it is. The river that roared so loudly through the canyon of your concerns has begun to fade, its thunder turning into a gentle, rhythmic hum that vibrates in the deep dark of the room. The bridge you have been walking, that sturdy, ancient arch of your own history, is no longer a place of testing, no longer a place where you must prove your weight or measure your strength. It is simply a place of rest, suspended between the cliffs of all that has passed and all that is yet to arrive. You can feel the granite beneath you, cool and unyielding, offering its support without asking for anything in return. You are not the current that rushes. Underneath you are the stone that allows the current to pass by. Notice how your body has grown heavy, as if the very atoms of your skin were sinking into the architecture of the bed, becoming one with the quiet, dark space of the night. Every muscle that spent the day bracing against invisible floods is unraveling now, thread by thread. The shoulders, once pulled tight by the need to be better, stronger, or different, are spreading out, softening into the mattress like snow melting into the earth. The jaw, which held the tension of so many unspoken explanations, is finally letting go, leaving the mouth slightly parted, the breath soft and unforced. You are no longer bracing. You are no longer checking for cracks. You are no longer testing the integrity of the life you are building. You are simply inhabiting it. The air in the room is still, cool, and filled with the scent of a deep, midnight woods, clean, ancient, and undisturbed. Your breath is coming in long, slow waves, moving through you like the wind, moving through the canyon, rhythmic and empty of effort. You are not trying to push the breath out or pull it in. You are simply allowing the natural tide of your life to rise and fall. With each cycle, the last remnants of the day's calculations dissolve. The blueprints you carried are drifting out of reach, and the iron stick you used to test the ground has slipped from your hand, forgotten in the tall, soft grass of your own fatigue. There is a profound, quiet dignity in this surrender. It is not a failure of will, but a mastery of awareness. You have spent so much of your life standing on the bridge, worried that if you were not perfectly vigilant, the structure would crumble under the pressure of the river. But look at where you are. The river has passed. The night has deepened, and the bridge is still standing, unmoved, unbothered, and entirely whole. You did not have to strike the stone to keep it strong. You did not have to worry the bridge into existence. It was already holding you, and it will continue to hold you through the silent, dark hours that remain. Let the teaching of the riverstone whistle settle into the center of your heart, a soft, resonant hum that needs no instrument to play. You are resonant. You are capable of harmony, not because you have smoothed away your jagged edges, but because you have finally allowed the wind of your own reality to pass through the openings you once tried so desperately to plug. Those gaps, those past mistakes, those patterns you feared repeating, they are not flaws. They are the apertures through which your own wisdom is finding its voice. You do not need to be seamless. You do not need to be a monument that never shivers. You are a bridge, and your strength is found in your ability to remain standing, even while the world moves and shifts and sings its wild, roaring song beneath you. The room is turning into a sanctuary of shadows, a place where the concepts of before and after have lost their meaning. There is only this depth, this stillness, and the sensation of being perfectly, completely supported. You do not have to solve your whole life tonight. You do not have to reconcile your present with your ancestry, nor do you have to map the path for your children or your future. All of that can wait for the sun, and even then, the sun will simply reveal that you are still here, still standing, still breathing, and still yourself. For now, there is only the permission to stop, the permission to close your eyes, the permission to let the heavy coat of your history slide off your shoulders and pool on the floor, empty and light. You are returning home, not to a place of perfect order, but to the place of your own quiet awareness. It is a home that does not require maintenance, a home that does not fear the floods, and a home that is always waiting for you. Regardless of how far you wandered into the canyon of your own anxiety, you are safe. You are held by the bedrock of your own existence. Every heartbeat is a reminder that you are alive, and every breath is a reminder that you are allowed to be peaceful. The world outside is turning, but you are anchored here in the vast, dark, and gentle current of the night. Drift now. Let the last thoughts be like leaves floating on the surface of the river, moving away, growing smaller, until they vanish into the dark bend of the horizon. There is no need to watch them. There is no need to wait for them to return. You are the bridge, and you are staying right here. You are the bridge, and you are finally resting in the strength of your own foundation. You are the bridge, and you have no work left to do but to witness the stars as they watch over the canyon, silent and steady, long after the river has forgotten the stone. If the life you were trying so hard to control was already waiting for you to trust it, how much of your burden would simply turn into air?